Hello, welcome, Sam. I'm so excited to have you on. Kicking off season two, very excited to say this in 2026 of Get Real and Own Person podcast. I'm Megan Morris Gerzon, and today I have a close friend and also a really killer professional that I am excited to have tell his story. So, Sam Shepler, feel free to introduce yourself, what you do, and why you're excited to talk about it today.
Thanks, Meg. Really a pleasure to be on here. Sam Shepler, the founder and CEO of Testimonial Hero, as well as a company called Product Hype. Um, really, my career has mostly been focused in creative entrepreneurship around marketing, video marketing, and B2B video marketing. And have really enjoyed, both the creative side of that work. And then in the past, 5, 6 years more recently, like the more, business side of that and scaling up that creative work and growing team and everything that comes with that. So yeah, really excited to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. So speaking from that entrepreneurship lens and quick fun fact, Sam, you worked with my husband and went to college with my husband, and you were a groomsman in our wedding. So we go way back through him. And I've been happy to become friends with you over the years. And then we've been cheering on your business, Testimonial Hero, from the sidelines. And I wanted to kind of dive in because you started a more of like the filmmaker road, and then now bringing everything you've learned into that growth journey to continue building what you've been building successfully for the last few years. And it's so funny because getting to know my husband, Gabe, he showed me some old films from college that you worked on and that you guys collaborated on. And it was so creative. And the one that comes to mind is the Sinnerman track. You can maybe give more details than that, but it just stands out how creative your filmmaking was. So you're a natural creative, and then you've built a lot of business skills since then. So can you talk me through how you shifted, how you used your video expertise to come up with this idea, and then how it's evolved since those early days?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great trip down memory lane. When I was getting my
I
undergraduate
butchered
film
the
degree.
video description. Sorry about that,
Yeah.
but
No, no, that's right. It was a music video to the song. The assignment was we had to, I think, pick a song. Um, and this was like a film class. We had to pick a song to make a music video. I picked this song "Sinnerman" by Nina Simone,
yeah.
and the kind of music video narrative was like there was a kind of like a little vignette for like each of the seven deadly sins or
Oh,
per se,
right.
right? So there's like a little like story arc and basically yeah, little vignettes that kind of all tied together in this kind of like branching narrative, and yeah, a lot of fun. um
It was
and
really fun to
yeah,
watch, and I might watch it after this conversation because
perfect, yeah.
it's really fun.
um yeah, I think like it's interesting, like I think like many agency founders, agency owners, you kind of end up being an accidental entrepreneur.
Hmm.
At first, you sort of realize, like, I know for me and Gabe, your husband, like, because, we were there, making videos. He was helping me make my school videos. And then we realized that, like, oh, like small businesses would actually pay us to make them videos. Um, if I think of like the main, like, first paid project we did, and this is in college, I think maybe like senior year. Um, it was a video for, a fundraising gala that some nonprofit called the Willis Center was doing, and, a good friend of ours, Sam Morse, who you also know,
Yep.
uh, also in the
Also in the lighting.
yeah, it was. interning there at the Willis Center, and someone at the Willis Center was like, "Oh, we need a video for this big gala," and he thought of us and recommended us. So I think like just everyone's always wondering like, well, how do you like get your first client right when you're starting out?
Yeah.
And like I think there's a lot to be said for your network knowing what you want to do, right? If no one, if our friend Sam Morse didn't know we were trying to, kind of launch a video agency back then, he wouldn't have been able to recommend us. So I think like the-
Mhm.
in a very real way, like we got our first, quote unquote big client. It was like a $700 project, which was like to us was like we're like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible.
Yeah. Exciting.
It's like we can buy so much like we can buy so much like pizza and beer with $700.
Yeah. All you need in
So
life.
yeah, exactly. So like yeah, I think just having people in your network kind of knowing what you're doing and
Mhm.
you know it is so valuable in the early days. It's like how can your network help you if they're not really aware like what your goals and dreams are?
That's a really interesting point that you bring that up right now because actually yesterday I was at a networking event, a women's networking event, and that's exactly that was one of the focus areas of not just what are your goals and your micro goals to achieve those, but one piece of that is what are the asks
Yeah.
to ask and articulate what you actually need from people, what you're looking for, and how they could be helpful. So you knew that from an early age, it seems, and you kind of spread the word through your network, right? Um, but I want to zoom back to when you were in college and fresh out of college, you actually took the leap and started your own agency with your friends. And my husband was part of that. And then that eventually got acquired, and a lot has come since then. So, how did you make that leap and trust it enough and know how to, like you said, get clients and keep it moving? And what helped you during that time?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's really interesting. I think so. We were actually, you know, initially thinking about some sort of like tech app, idea, like a because being in, the greater Boston area, there was a big startup scene, big venture capital scene, and
Mhm,
a lot of the sort of like entrepreneurial advice is that like, oh, like, agencies and services don't scale, like, oh, like, you know, oh, you're gonna do like a services business, like, that's just a lifestyle business type of thing. So like
mhm,
at first we were like, let's figure out a way to like build this app and it can make video creation easy for like tech companies. But we had literally no tech skills, so that didn't go very far. Like um
tech sounds good, but I don't know
yeah,
anything about tech.
yeah, and we did like go into some pitch competitions and like
Oh, you
made it
did?
actually like pretty far, like in some of those pitch competitions. So like but again, it's like, we didn't have any competitive advantage
Mm,
um in that, so that's like, we were chasing this like technically better business model at first that was like technically better according to some people, but like one of my big kind of learnings in hindsight and takeaways is like, the things that are like technically worse, but you have a competitive advantage are functionally better than things that
mm,
are like sound better and more quote unquote scalable, but you have no competitive advantage. So like I'm
mhm,
always a big and again, these aren't things I realized at the time. These are just more like reflections in
yeah,
hindsight. Like literally 12 years, 13, 14 years later.
mhm,
Um so yeah, it's I think that's like um a big thing is like I always like to say is like why are you if you're thinking about like starting a new business, it's like, you know, try and build the business that only you could build. And, how can
that's great.
what's unique, like about this business based on your background how can you inject your like unique expression of your personality into the business and does that also fit like what, like a need in the market, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, so so yeah, essentially, that's kind of how we got it started in that first business. Is like no one like our software obviously didn't catch on, didn't get very far, but we realized that like there was an opportunity, more businesses needed video. People were like paying us money for it without us trying to like, you know, work too hard. It was like that was way easier. So that kind of became like the obvious path. And then we also felt like there a lot of the corporate video, and this is like 2011 ish, 2011, 2012. Um, all the corporate video at the time felt like very stodgy and like fake plant in the corner, kind of like
Yeah.
hostage interview
Yeah.
framing of the film shot. So like we wanted to bring something of our more like younger, fresher sensibilities, which ironically is like now like we're being like there's like us 10 years ago are like coming trying to compete with like us, me now, right? It's like so there's always
Uh-huh.
that younger generation kind of
Yeah.
coming up to like disrupt things with an awesome, really cool aesthetic.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, that's kind of how it started out. And as it we just kind of hustled um to get clients. Like we would, you know, drive up to Boston. We were in Worcester, so it was like 45, 50 minutes. We drive up to
Mhm.
Boston a couple days a week, network, do things like really cost effectively or like major discounts to get our foot in the door, build that portfolio.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I'm a huge fan of that when people are just starting out in the creative business is like, you have to like, the most important thing is like getting the portfolio and the success stories, and, whether
Yes.
that's like a video testimonial or a case study, and then the work example. And then once you have that, 4 to 6, portfolio examples and 4 to 6 success stories, then you can kind of bring that to market and sell people at full price, right? But like
Mhm.
until you get to that point, like in my opinion, like the big goal is just getting your portfolio to a place where it's actually like, commercially strong.
Yeah, like proof of concept,
Yeah.
basically, right? And I really like what you said about thinking about a business model that sounds good and maybe you should try versus your competitive advantage. And I think that works in business and it works in just how you present yourself in life.
Yeah.
um, because oftentimes you think you should act a certain way. You try to take on this persona that really isn't authentic. But once you understand what makes you unique, what are your superpowers, and that's your actual advantage when you bring something that no one else can do but you. So back to your business, it sounded like, you were young, hungry, and eager to break into this space. And so do you feel like your competitive advantage was your creativity and kind of disrupting just the norm? Or why did you think people needed your business, and how did you pitch that at the time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll, I think initially it was just really good value. Because like, when you're fresh, we were in college, coming right out of college, like you're going to charge a lot lower prices. And then like, and I think a lot of people in hindsight were like, oh, that's like a really good deal. Like they're not charging that much. And like, they're like super young, but they seem like they know what they're doing. We'll take a chance on them, which in
Uh-huh.
hindsight, like I'm so, I'm so grateful and like frankly like astounded for like some of the pretty big brands that like, you know, worked with us. Very big brands. And like when we were like really young and like I look back and then I'm like,
Like
man, there's
22,
stuff I
23.
didn't know. Like I was so young. Like we were all so young. Like and it's just, but they took a chance on us. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I'm very grateful for just the the companies that did that. We One of our first big projects was with a company called like, so we really niched ourselves in like B2B tech, but one of our first like big success stories in B2B tech was a company called Yesware. Um, they they've got, I'm not sure if they're still around. I think they've gone through a lot of like iterations, but they were a very hot company in like 2013-ish, 2014. Um, and like they were like our first like big like so I think they've been acquired and since been acquired, um but yeah, they were one of our first big tech clients who kind of took a big bet on us, and we did a great job, and they were one of our anchor clients. So yeah, I think it's like, using, again, it's like when we were young, it's like we could afford to like do it competitively, pricing wise. And then, yeah, that aesthetic, like, um, you know, we, everyone was filming everything on tripods. It felt like very static. And we were always using, we used tripods, but we also used, the monopod and, the sort of, fly cams and, gimbals, which again, like very obvious things now, but like,
Mhm.
13 years ago were like a bit, more unique. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like kind of bringing, I always say it's like, it's better to be different than it is to be better. Because like
Yes.
being better in a creative field is like highly subjective, and it's um, very hard for the client to really make that assessment. So like, it's like, yeah, we were focused on being, and again, a lot of this is somewhat in hindsight. Like I'm not gonna say like this was all thought out at the time, but yeah, we definitely did were conscious of bringing a fresh aesthetic. That was very important to us. And then like unconsciously, our pricing was very competitive. We had no idea that at the time. We thought we were like, oh, I hope they go for this. We're charging so much. But like in hindsight, like, we were very competitive on pricing because we just didn't know any better.
Well, that's some luck, right? But you clearly presented yourselves in a way that worked. So that's incredible, especially at such a young age, and to build that portfolio of larger names. And that I'm sure that really helped with your foundational experience, and attributed to where you ended up today. So just to move forward from that time, the company ended up being acquired, and then you ended up leaving and going on your own and starting Testimonial Hero. So thinking back to, like you said, it's better to be different than better, and having that strong competitive advantage. What made you focus in on kind of like the human storytelling in a strategic way as the core of that idea?
Yeah, and you'll notice a similar theme here. So like after I left, the company that, acquired, Skyscope, our first, company, which by the way, just, I think we were sort of like at a point where we're like, we weren't really sure where we wanted to go, and this opportunity presented itself to like play on a bigger stage
Mhm.
within, a bigger, national company. And um, it and I think, yeah, I think, and actually, like, obviously, your husband is still with that company, and it's worked out really well for him.
Well, actually, he recently left.
Okay, well,
He
all right,
very
well,
fresh news. Yeah.
hot off the press. So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but yeah, so that's kind of the. I'm sure people want to know, like, oh, like, what's the backstory there? So like, we kind of wanted an opportunity to like see what it was like on like a bigger stage and play with a little more resources. Um, Eventually, like I did end up leaving. I personally, um, liked a lot of that, but I also am just like independent to a fault. So I just felt
Mhm.
like I had to kind of, go out on my own again. Um, and initially I was really, um, focused on not doing another video agency. Um, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. This is my chance to do something with tech. And I worked on a tech product for 6, 8 months. Didn't really go anywhere. And then I was like,
Were
all
you
right,
actually
well,
building it?
I was actually building it. Yeah. So
Oh,
this time
wow.
I actually got a little further. So I built it. It was a iOS app. I like learned Swift. And, um, yeah, well, I learned that I cobbled together like some Swift tutorials. It would be actually a lot easier nowadays with all the advancements in AI. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I built like a prototype that worked, but it really just, you know it was a consumer app. It was, very challenging to get, product market fit on a consumer app when you're bootstrapping it. So
Mhm.
that ended up not, going anywhere. I was like, well, like I want to do something that like, at least in the interim, that I know will work. So I was
Mhm.
like, well, I know that I can do, video agencies. And then I just kind of improved the positioning and the focus, to improve the scalability. So one of the challenges with agencies and the agency business model is if you're always repeating the wheel, um, if you're always kind of starting from scratch and everything's very like bespoke, if you're always like reinventing the wheel, it's very hard to, scale the company and extricate yourself personally from a lot of the day to day. That was like, frankly, some of the stuff that we realized in our first company is like, if you're doing a commercial with actors one day, and then you're doing a testimonial the other day, and you're doing an animated video the other day, you're doing, a documentary, for a nonprofit. The next day, it's like they're all like very bespoke, and uh, it's hard to, remove yourself as the business owner from that.
Mhm.
So Testimonial Hero started it as, an experiment to see if we could kind of productize, one of my favorite video marketing category, which is, customer stories.
Mhm.
Um, and it turned out that's exactly what we did.
Great. That's so interesting that you worked on something totally different, and then you said, "Well, I might as well try and go back to something I know," and then you kind of whittled it down. And I just wanna say, quick anecdote, I also tried to build an app back right before I met Gabe, and it is very difficult to, you know, fund it, get the right team, get to the prototype. It's a lot of people do it, but I think you took a smarter route with the agency idea. And then I ended up just putting that as experience I had and moving forward as well. And it was a dating app, by the way. Um, maybe it'll pick up
Yes, I,
someday.
I remember that. And
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
consumer apps are just quite challenging for a lot of
They're
reasons.
challenging.
Yeah, like, um, and especially when you're bootstrapping them. So yeah, I know, I remember that. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
fellow, consumer apps, fledgling consumer app attempts mutually there.
Yeah, you gotta at least try, right? That's
Exactly.
what entrepreneurship is, just
Yeah.
being brave enough to try it. So props to both of us. But back to understanding how to scale, because that is a huge challenge for so many business models, places I've worked, people I've spoken with. That's the biggest thing is how do you figure out what could potentially scale? So I'm kind of curious when you decided to hone in on customer stories. It was something like you said, it's something you enjoyed, something you knew how to do, and something that could be repeatable. Were there mistakes that stand out that you made early on with kind of forming that business model that actually contributed to the way things are now? I'm just kind of curious about like the mistakes that stand out. Well, maybe nothing's a mistake, but just things that were maybe challenges.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I mean, in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have even committed with to it earlier. Like
Mhm.
for a while, I was like, oh, a this is cool, but like I'm kind of like doing this in the interim until I figure out like what I really want to do, type of thing. Where like in reality, it's like the what I was looking to do was like right in front of me the whole time, right? I was doing it already.
Okay.
Um, so like, yeah, just kind of like I think I would have, um, and and honestly, like I didn't know how, frankly, good of a business, that, agencies and services businesses could be, because I hadn't really been exposed to, a lot of successful, agency founders doing, multiple millions in revenue or tens of millions in revenue at that time.
Mhm.
So like I kind of just thought like, oh, agency can be like, you know, nice little like small business, which to be fair, like that is where most agencies, but like there's obviously a lot of agencies that are. I mean, there's you know, there's billion-dollar professional services firms if you look at Deloitte and McKinsey. So it's like the
Yeah.
like professional services absolutely can scale. Um, and just scales differently. And I think like there was a lot of kind of this sort of legacy story from a lot of entrepreneurship media, entrepreneurship books, entrepreneurship podcasts, where like for a really long time, services and were sort of like thought like, at least in that the way I felt here, maybe I was projecting, but like you've kind of felt like you're like a second class entrepreneurship citizen if you were doing a services business compared to like a tech business. And I think this is like
Yeah.
very driven by the fact that I was in Boston and like
Mhm.
all sexy events for entrepreneurship are around tech venture capital driven ecosystem, right? And
Mhm.
so I think like honestly I like the big only mistake or learning in it was I mean tons of learnings, but like if I the only thing I would change in hindsight is I would have like just committed earlier and not let, the sort of like outside biases of, shape my perception about like what the business could be, and maybe would have
Mhm.
found, mentors even earlier that could have shown me like, oh, this is like how, great and significant these businesses can grow, which I eventually did. Um, but yeah, it definitely like, I was definitely just like, kinda just, not fully mentally committed for, initially, yeah.
Why do you think that was? Do you think it was because you were second guessing yourself, overthinking aspects of it, comparing yourself? Like what you said you were ignoring what you kind of already knew could work. So what do you think just like psychologically was contributing to that at the time?
I think, at the time, I felt like that it wasn't a big enough opportunity for me, like,
Okay.
it just wasn't like an opportunity vehicle that could satisfy my ambitions for impact
Yeah.
and which, again, which is kind was kinda like, it's like, well, anything can scale, like, it's like you just gotta do the work, and it's a little bit different how these businesses scale,
Hmm.
but, yeah, I just at the time, I was like, "Am I wasting my" everything has, like, an opportunity cost, right? So that it was like, "Am I wasting my quote, unquote, potential in doing this business when it's like an agency? Should I be doing something, quote, unquote, bigger?" That was,
Mm.
like, what I thought at the time.
I get that. I do. That makes sense. And that's just really great that it like you said, you put in the work and you figured out how to scale this.
Yeah,
Um, and you're clearly a very ambitious person and you dream big and you want to make an impact with your skills. So um that's that's kind of like the big framework, and you were able to make it doable. But like we were saying, it's a grind, right? When you're starting out and now you're married and you're a dad of two. And so can you kind of talk about like maybe sacrifices you've had to make or how you've had to balance keeping your family life going while putting in that work and eventually getting to now a pretty large team, right? You've grown a lot over the last few years. So just can
yeah.
you walk me through that?
Yeah, definitely, and, yeah, I think we're at about 50 people full-time right now.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I think well, for better well, I don't know if there's for better or for worse, definitely for better, I guess, in this case, like, I had got the business to, like, a good amount of kind of escape a little bit of, like, a good amount of traction, like, before I had kids, so, like, so that was good.
Yeah,
Um
that is good.
I think that would have been different. I think like most of the sacrifices I have made for sure have not been have been I've sacrificed more success in the business or well, I guess it depends how you define success, but like more um, maybe more growth or more ability to focus like at the expense of like, my family like but like family time and stuff like that and just um
Yeah.
but that's not a sacrifice because it's something I'm willing to do. Um, so like I've never. I never felt like a yeah, I think that's just a choice that I've made. And I think also that, I mean, the key thing is like it's all about having like the right people on your team.
Mhm.
That's goes for any business. But like, the quality of life, especially in an agency and services business, like the quality of life is directly proportional to like the quality of your team and your leadership team, especially and your executive
Mhm.
team. Um, and I've been really fortunate to I have an incredibly wonderful, talented team, leadership team, and executive team that I give them a ton of autonomy um, to make decisions, and I trust hire good people and trust their judgment. So I think that is like that has been the way that I balance things is you know um, basically hiring really trying to, I think that's personally like something I really enjoy and probably one of my, relative skills is like being able to identify really good talent. Uh,
Nice.
I really enjoy that. I love like talking to people, understanding what makes them tick, understanding if I can satisfy their goals within the context of, our vision here.
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, I think like I honestly feel grateful and like I feel like I haven't overall like I haven't had to sacrifice much because I've done frankly a pretty good job at building a great team and my team is fantastic. Now, I will say the caveat there is like over the years I've had to sacrifice personal income to pay really
Yeah.
good people.
Yeah.
Um so that is the I mean that's the thing but 100% worth it, and
Mhm.
so it's like that as you cross the couple $1 million in revenue threshold as an agency, you kind of have to um, make a choice, and we're mid high seven figures at the moment, so like, um, but basically like a lot of people, agencies kind of there's this really messy middle, or like there's like this kind of swamp or death zone of like $1 to $3 million in revenue, where like if the founder of the agency, it's like they need more leadership, they need more management layers in their company, but they're like not you're not quite big enough to like afford it yet, unless you take like a pay cut as
Mhm.
a founder. And some people aren't able or aren't willing to make that trade to
Mm.
take, a couple steps back temporarily and personal comp to, bet that longer term it'll pay off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always pay off. It's like, they hire
Mhm.
the person or like, they don't have the right management systems. And it's like they end up just stuck at $2.5 million making less money than they were when they're at 1 million. So like
Mhm.
it's very tricky. And that's, I think a lot of the stuff that, I'm fortunate and I've also been very intentional about
Mm.
that whole process of like getting through that $1 to $3 million kind of death zone that you run into in a services business where it's like, yeah, you have to make trade-offs. And part of this all comes from actually having good um, unit economics and like understanding your financials because
Mhm.
that's the other thing with agencies. And I get it. I'm a creative person, like originally, not a finance guy, but like a lot of times your agencies can't actually invest and bring on those people that make such a difference in the quality of life of the founder because they can't afford to because they don't have the right, gross margins on their delivery. And then
Mm.
they end up, not having any room on their P&L to actually invest in things like marketing or other like operational expenses that don't fall under like cost of goods sold that are critical for building infrastructure, but you know um, are gonna suck out their net profit at the end of the day. So like, it-
Mhm.
I know we went really like deep in like tactical there for a second on like the P
No,
and L,
it's
but
good. It's really good tips.
it all comes together and it's like and it's like the sequencing is like to get the right people you have to have the financial means to afford them, And, you know, a lot
Be
of
willing to
people
take
are
a risk as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And also like be okay with like taking a step backwards, or it's like, yeah, I could pay myself more, but I'm gonna invest in my team and build something bigger in the
Mhm.
long run. And
Yeah.
that's when you sort of like build more enterprise value. Cause like there's a completely like inverse relationship between the value of a business, and like how involved the founder is. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and especially for agencies, like it's like if the founder of the agency is required to run the business, then there's not a lot of value to the business. But if the founder of the
Mm.
business is not required, and you have like a actual like institutionalized business, that's a lot more value.
Mhm. No, that's a really smart way to think about it, and I think that's a really important framework for anyone listening and in the same boat or thinking of even doing something like this. And it is tricky, right? But it's nice that you can trust yourself enough to know which people would work and get the most out of it. And it seems like you have that leadership style and vision that is worth taking the risk on, and for the end goal that you're aiming for and making that impact, it seems to be working. So that's a good thing for sure. And then just all of these things that you've kept close in mind, are there any um, other people that are doing similar things or books that stand out that have you've leaned on and that you really admire and have been kind of mirroring in any way?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think, yeah, I've read a lot of most of the books over the years. One book that stands out, it's pretty unknown, but I think it's a good book. Um, it's called the San Francisco Fallacy. Uh,
I think I know that one, yeah.
so it's the San Francisco Fallacy:
Mhm.
10 Fallacies That Make Founders Fail by Jonathan Siegel. Um, and it basically, yeah, it's like, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff I've talked about is like critiques of like common like startup cultural beliefs and like, you know, um, I think that's a really good book. It was one of those books that I read that gave me like, it's like these are like things I already have been thinking that no one is saying out loud. That's
Mm.
like, and you hear them, written in a book by like a legitimate founder, and you sometimes you just need that like, little bit of nudge of permission to like even internalize and have more confidence about things you kind of feel.
Mhm.
So I say that would be
Yes.
one. Um, I think like another, book, I really, enjoy kind of philosophy and,
Me too.
broader topics as well, history, kinda just, stuff like that. I really, so I would say the book, Anti-Fragile by, Nassim Nicholas Taleb has been like a really helpful book for me over the years. Just kind of thinking about like the whole fragility is like, um, all about this idea that some things can actually like benefit from disorder. Uh,
Mhm.
and in our particular business, like it's all like majority like project based. And I think a lot of people are like, you can't scale a project based business because it's so random. Like it's so just,
Yeah. Yeah.
but, um, just kind of like, um, that book has a lot of, big ideas. It's very like, it's a very broad sweeping like
I
economics.
think I would like that. I'll have to read
Yeah.
that one. That's
It's
cool.
super interesting, and just kind of
Mhm.
like, has a very different point of view that, y- y- I think like predictive. One of the things that I took from that book as it, pertained to like, our business and our business models, like, you know, we all assume that like predictability is something that like we should strive for, but like that's not always the case. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorite books. And then other than that, just like business biographies. I really enjoy business biographies. I think often the most like illustrative thing. in business biographies is just how long it takes to achieve things.
Yes. You
I'm
have to
thinking
be
about
patient with the
yeah,
process.
yeah, totally. And like, um, I mean, the two examples that come to mind are Shoe Dog, and then with the founder of Nike, and like Made in America, I believe it's called, with the Sam Walton, founder of Walmart. And like in both of
Mm,
those books, like they're like doing Sam Walton had like one store for like 10 years or something. It was like a little corner store for like 10 years. And then eventually,
yeah.
like, and like the founder of Nike was like selling, like just reselling like Japanese shoes and not even manufacturing them for like 10 years or something. Like maybe it wasn't
Yeah.
exactly that, but like just kind of puts it in perspective that like, over decades, that's often how these great enduring companies are built. And like, it's
Mhm.
so easy for all of us to be like, oh, like if I'm not like a huge success in like 6 months, like this is a failure. Like, and it's just
Yeah.
a good like perspective shift to see that a lot of, everything, meaningful takes time.
That is very, very wise, and I am still in the first year of own person, and everyone says, like, "A first year is kind of experimental, keep going, keep pushing forward," and it's nice to hear you feel the same way too, and, like, the patience and the persistence and just, kind of going with when the time is right and trusting that. I've been doing a lot of that myself, so thanks for bringing that up, and, yeah, so I think that concludes all my questions for now. We could talk for hours, but we can save that for maybe a part two. But thank you so much. It was just great to hear that what you're doing now seems like really meaningful work, not only with what you're producing for clients, but with your team and what you're building. So thank you so much for the conversation. And um, yeah, we'll have to get together soon and just keep the ideas flowing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megan. It was an absolute pleasure to be on. And if any listeners want to get in touch, the best place to reach me is LinkedIn, probably. And we are looking to invest and acquire in other, marketing agencies. So feel free to, reach out. I also do a few like coaching. I have a very small, like kind of coaching side business, mostly because I really enjoy,
Nice.
helping other founders. So if you want to do a coaching call, you run an agency, you feel stuck, you're not, sure where to go. Yeah, feel free to, people can feel free to reach out as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Sam. We'll talk soon. Take care.